Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It's the Full 40 with Chris and Rob, part of the Stay Tuned Network, brought to you by Nova Insider. We are back following an enormous week. Win over Providence in a raucous environment at the Dunk. A pedestrian win versus Georgetown. We'll get into all of that. Big week coming up. One game, but this game's a big one. At UConn in the XL Center in Hartford in Connecticut. Ranked versus ranked, a big one coming up. But first, Rob, what are you drinking?
All right. We're recording at night. I'm back on the alcohol train, baby. And I will tell you, a warning to our listeners, I am jacked up. I don't know what it is, but the energy level is high right now. So you got to deal with it. So to answer your question, Chris, I'm drinking a little Teeling whiskey direct from the great country of Ireland. One of my favorites. So let's go.
I love to hear that. Look, we went 2-0 after I drank Maker's Mark last week. So I'm sticking with it. Not coming off the Maker's Mark until we take an L.
Ooh,
Okay.
So April 1st.
April 1st, maybe later. Maybe November.
Wow. Yeah.
So you never know. I mean, you never know.
As long as we don't take that Juwan Howard punch to the face, we'll be okay.
Yes. So that's a good entry. You mentioned that we're at night. This is Sunday night, 8:30 p.m. But before we get into anything else, this episode is brought to you by Home Field and their coming Villanova collection. If you don't know them, Home Field is a premium collegiate apparel brand out of Indianapolis. It's incredibly comfortable stuff, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. Rob, I don't know about you, but like when they announced that they were coming, when they kind of reached out to us, I was so jazzed. I almost just tweeted the direct message, and we weren't allowed to do that, so I couldn't. But I was so freaking jacked up that Home Field was going to finally bring out Villanova gear.
It's been a long time coming. I will say, I'm big on the vintage stuff. We are always talking on the podcast how we want some more of those vintage logos. So we've seen a little preview already. There's some pretty cool stuff coming. So I'm definitely gonna check that out.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that. Home Field is kicking off Big New Saturday season 3. They launch a new school every Saturday for 8 weeks straight. And we're week 6, which is this upcoming Saturday, February 26th. They dug through the archives, guys. There is I can't tell you everything about each piece of apparel, but there is some 90s dinosaur letters. There's some 80s stuff. There's some good stuff in there, and I think you're gonna love it. 14 pieces total in the collection. T-shirts, hoodies, crew necks, all vintage stuff. And for our listeners, a very special announcement. New customers to Home Field can get 15% off their first purchase from Home Field with code FULL40, FULL40 at checkout at homefieldapparel.com. So, big time stuff. Get excited. Again,
we're excited.
FULL40, FULL40 for 15% off your first purchase from Home Field. Wait till next Saturday for the Villanova collection to drop. It's going to be awesome, and you got to love it. Okay.
Let's go.
Big show today. What do we got? We talked about it. We're going to talk about the games that were played. We're going to hand out the awards. Going to jump right into the awards in just a second. We have, we're going to recap Providence. We're going to kind of recap Georgetown. We're going to talk a little bit about those narratives that we've been talking about all season long. We're going to go over our little set. You might have seen it on socials. Our I guess what do we call it? What our on-campus journalist, on-campus reporter,
on-campus reporter, yeah,
Tessa Peloso. did a vibe check at students. We're gonna talk about that.
I loved it. I'm pretty excited about this.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. We got to talk about the bracket preview.
Yes.
Saw a lot of you guys on our spaces yesterday, which was awesome. Talk a little bit about the national picture. Big time Big East week. And it's coming down to the wire as we race towards the Big East tournament, in addition to the NCAA tournament. Got to talk about that. And then finally, after all of that stuff, we have a special guest coming on, Rob Dauster from the Field of 68. Big time journalist coming on. He's a UConn fan. He hosts a UConn podcast called Top Dogs that is on the Field of 68. He's coming on to preview the Connecticut game at Connecticut. Rob, there's nothing left to do. We got to jump into this.
It's going to be action packed. Like
we got to go.
It's our favorite time of the year. We're just absolutely hitting it. The schedule worked out for us too. We're not ending with clunkers. Like, this is great. Like, yeah, it's basically fucking March. Let's rock and roll.
It's basically fucking March. It's great. We're going to start on a down note, though. We're going to hand out the Pass the Fucking Ball award.
Just get it out of the way.
We're going to get it out of the way, though. That's the goal here. We're just trying to get it out of the way so we can focus on all the other cool stuff.
Move,
Pass the Fucking Ball award.
Get out of the way. Okay.
Whoa. That's my job. I'm the one who...
Yes, Chris is bad rapping.
Bad raps on this podcast. Rob, know your role, okay? No. Pass the Fucking Ball award goes to the whole team for that dog shit performance versus Georgetown yesterday. Okay. Yeah. And like I posted online, I want to talk about this for a second. I posted online, bad win, whatever. As I posted that tweet. Yeah. And I got people responding back to me, no win's a bad win in the Big East. And I'm like, I love the talk track, but guys, Jay Wright might say that in the press conference. The moment Jay Wright enters that locker room, he is lighting those guys the fuck up. Okay. Let's just call a spade here. That was a terrible game yesterday. We played like shit. And the only reason that we're better is because we're a better culture, better program, and Georgetown sucks. So that's the reason we won.
They're terrible. Yeah. Like they're
terrible. These guys are Ken Palm number like 190. Okay. This is if we play like that, if we play like we did yesterday in the 3-14, 2-15 game, we're going to lose. We're going to lose. Now, what I think happened? These guys had a letdown game. Okay. It happens. Everyone likes to say, oh, no letdown games, no, whatever. Like it's a letdown game.
No, I mean, we haven't, and we'll get into this in the Providence game. Like, we haven't come off a game with that level of emotional intensity combined with physical intensity, combined with like having to prepare for that since I would argue the 2018 tournament. So that trajectory is not at all surprising to me. So I'm with you. Like it's not a good win. Call it what it is. That said, it is a win.
Yeah.
Take it.
Crisis averted. Move on. Move on. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to move on. There's nothing else to talk about in that Georgetown game. No. Done. The alpha dog of the week. We already announced it. We didn't wait. There was no need to fucking wait. Colin Gillespie.
Arf.
Big. 33 alpha dog of the week. Big time points against Providence at the dunk. I love the anecdote that Andrew Catalan and Steve Lapis shared towards the end of that game, that they were like, he walked out, the fans absolutely got right on top of him, just riding him. And he winks at them and is like smiling, laughing, just like knowing that he's a killer and he's not scared of them. He thinks it's fun. He's happy they're back, right? Like he's happy that they're there. He wanted to play. He played in dead arenas last year.
Absolutely.
He didn't want that. He wanted to play in an arena where people absolutely hate his guts and shut them up. And shut them up is what he did with the Shaq Fit man play of the week. An unusual man play, but a man play nonetheless. Colin, late in the game, everyone knows the play. You've all seen the replay by now. Pick is set. They sag off of him for 1 second. Colin and his enormous cojones launches a three. Absolutely wet from the get-go. Just right down, dagger, and then some, ends the game. It's over. Colin Gillespie, we're up 5. They have no hope left. Game over. That's our Shaq Fit Man Play of the Week. We typically, Rob, do not give it to like a shock.
Yeah, we debated this a little bit because when we were talking about it, you're like, oh, I think that's got to be it. And I'm like, but it's just not what we're typically talking about. But I think when you take the step back and you think about what that man play represents, it represents that absolute throwdown, that killer moment that turns the game, the payoff, the culmination of all that hard work in the gym and all that practice. And that moment absolutely epitomizes it to me. Colin's got to get it. I will say, I tried to almost give him a rare 3 award week and give him the pass the fucking ball award for his Georgetown performance because it was a little bit weird, but I think we took the right approach there. So Colin takes 2 of the awards, absolutely deserves them this week. Look, I got to say, I'll be the first to admit, I've been a little bit up, a little bit down on Colin this year. This game, I haven't seen him that pumped, that excited about a game in a long time. Obviously, we've played some big games in the last year. We obviously played UCLA. We played Baylor this year. There was just something about this team, and maybe it was the arena, the environment, Colin feeling like he had something to prove again, but it absolutely brought out that killer instinct that I feel like had been missing a little bit from Colin, and honestly from this team. Like, from a fan's perspective, this team just looked different and it felt different. And I have to imagine, like, hat tip to the Providence fans at the dunk, that arena was rocking, and getting into that environment, you have to know, just kind of jacks up your excitement level. And we talked a little bit about it earlier, has to jack up your emotion level and just get these guys playing at a higher caliber level. Because it was just an awesome game to watch too.
It was, I mean, what an advertisement for the Big East, that to be on CBS Sports Network.
Oh my God. Killer.
I mean, just absolutely killer. But it seemed like the whole world, the whole country was talking about Villanova versus Providence. It was talking about Colin Gillespie coming out of that game. So everyone paid attention to it, even if they don't have CBS Sports Network. The college basketball universe was locked in at the dunk. And to Providence's credit, there have been a lot of questions about Providence and everything like that. And they reinvigorated some of those questions with a questionable performance, needing overtime to beat Butler by 1 today. But I think Providence rang the bell too. Providence played pretty well. They made some bad mistakes down the stretch, which was unlike them. I just think it was one of those situations where they ran into a team that was equally experienced. And so they're like a team of super seniors and seniors. We are also a team of super seniors and seniors.
Yeah.
That also just has a little bit more pedigree. And a guy named Colin Gillespie, who was an All-American caliber player. So what happened? The biggest stars shined on the brightest stage of the conference this season. And that's it. And what more can you say? I mean, honestly, what more can you say? I know, you brought up Rob, I want to correct you a little bit. You've been up and down on Colin Gillespie. You've just been to the point where you've seen him for 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's like I want to correct you because I feel like you didn't avail your point very well.
I think you stated it better, yeah.
And you want to see some new blood or whatever. That might be there's maybe a boredom factor, whatever that may be. But you've never doubted Colin Gillespie. You've never been like thought that Colin wasn't good. I mean,
that's fair.
And on this podcast, we've been singing Colin's praises from the get-go.
Totally.
I mean, I kind of jinxed Colin on this podcast, going way back to a 30-point performance he had against Georgetown like several years ago. I was like, Colin might end up as the best 3-point shooter in Villanova history. And immediately went on a slump for like an entire year.
No, I think you're right in that. What excites me is, as we talked about before, you get to see the guys grow. You get to see people change and evolve and take things to another level. And we've seen Colin been operating at this top Big East level for a while now. So you almost kind of wanted to see, is there something else there? And I think we saw that in the Providence game. You saw like, oh shit, there's another level of killer here if we need it. And we're gonna need it come tournament time, because he had 33. Justin had 19, 18 in the first half. Like,
yeah,
goodness gracious, hold on. But like, we're going to need the other guys to chip into, but we'll need some of those killer performances.
10 minutes into the game, if I told you that someone was going to go for 33 and it wasn't going to be Justin Moore, you would have been like, you're fucking crazy.
100%. Absolutely. Totally agree. Totally.
Right? Like, I mean, Justin Moore absolutely got us going in that game. He was red hot.
I gotta say, there was and I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier. Obviously, we're not doing a lot of X's and O's. I think people are just like jacked up about this game. So like, I want to keep on the jacked up element. Like, I literally haven't been this pumped after a game since the 2018 title. Obviously, we've had some fun games. We've had some relatively important games since then, but nothing kind of brought this level of energy where we finished that game just like, yes, like I am pumped up. Let's go. Let's bring on next. And it felt like you're leading into something. And frankly, I think that was reflected in, the Twitter spaces that we hosted afterwards, where there were literally hundreds, I feel like we're exaggerating, but hundreds of people in the space, because everybody else was jacked up, but the rest of the Big East was jacked up about this game too.
Yeah, we had fans from like 7 different schools in that Twitter spaces after the
Absolutely
game. I mean, it was hilarious. I mean, like I just at some point in time just like went on autopilot and just let the Providence, and I was just alternating between Providence and UConn fans, because the UConn fans were just doing all the work from the purpose of just absolutely needling the fuck out of the Providence fans, and it was just an electric environment in there.
It was great. It was great.
I'm sorry, Rob. Can I weigh in for a second here?
Yeah,
please do.
Remember, Kansas was ranked number 1, and we beat them in 2020 at the Wells Fargo. That you didn't feel anything on that? That was just a standard run-of-the-mill win.
No, not only that, it also ended on a Jermaine Samuels like fucking deep 3. Yeah. Yes. So
but after the game, you were like, "Yeah, you Villanova, man. That's what we do." Like,
I mean, basically, I will say there was a little bit of almost like what are the stakes? I feel like, look, you're asking me to remember a couple years ago. I'm just probably bullshitting at this point. Let's call it what it is. But like, it's like, what were the stakes of that? Yeah, it was a big win in December.
Yep.
That's fair. That's great. Like, this was and that was still like, I don't know, it felt like the championship was still relatively recent. Now we're a few years and a couple years of COVID removed from a title. So I'm kind of like, all right, we haven't been in this like absolute let's get jacked up for something mindset. And this to me was going into an away arena of, I can't talk. You know what I'm trying to say. It's really.
Yeah. No. You know what? You answered the bell there. It was a good response.
Okay.
I'll add to that, Brian. The other point is that A, timing of the year matters, but B, the way the game was played, right? Like the Kansas game was a rock fight. We knew that we didn't have them on talent. So we like slowed the game down and turned it into an absolute slugfest. So we had the last shot and Jermaine hit it, right? Like, and that was awesome. It was fun. It was cool. It was amazing. And the program needed it at that time. And that season would have turned out pretty good, whatever. This win showed us something about this team that we hadn't previously seen.
Yeah. Well said.
That was the point. That was my overall takeaway. A, on the road, tight game, tight environment, make the winning plays down the stretch.
Yeah.
Right. That was A. B, win over a top 10 team, which we hadn't done before. So I think this team showed us something down the stretch. And I think Colin and Justin showed us an extra gear that they have, which I think that we were all waiting for very patiently, I might add, and sometimes impatiently down the stretch. But anyway, that was 5 days in the past. We got a lot to talk about here.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on.
We talked about our reaction to the game. Can we spend a couple of minutes on some of the on-campus reactions to the game as well?
Oh my God.
Amazing. So we got a shout. We shouted at the top of the show. Our on-campus reporter, Tessa, went out, talked to a bunch of students after the game. I think she was on campus on Thursday. She's definitely going to be back on campus in the coming weeks. So absolutely take a look out for her. She did some awesome interviews with students to just get a sense of whether they were watching the games, what their takes were. all of that good stuff. It was, and I got to say, my takeaway from it was a mixed bag of which I thoroughly enjoyed watching. Chris, did you have any highlights, or do you want me to take it out? Because I've got a couple that stood out to me.
I mean, so there's a lot that stood out to me in that. It was all over the place. But it goes to show you, it's a school of 6,400 undergrads, right? It's not big by any stretch of the imagination, but like we get 1,500 students at the games, right? Like 2,000 at the Wells Fargo Center. It shows you that in order to get you got to get like 40% of your current student body like into basketball.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so what we saw was about a 50% hit rate. There was about 50% of the students that Tessa interviewed that were like, oh, I don't know, I follow it, but like, maybe. And then there was some people who were like absolutely just ripping. And so I got to give shout outs to the two girls. There was one tall girl, I forget her name.
Kelly.
Senior. Or she seemed tall relative to her friend, and Tessa's relatively short. So but she seemed relatively tall. She knew her shit. Like she was like, I want her on the podcast. I want her to come on.
She was confident. She's like, let's go.
Then there was the other girl. There was that whole Carly. In that group of three girls that Tessa was interviewing. Okay. This girl, Carly, knew her shit so stone cold. And what was pissing me off about watching that was that one of her friends was wearing a Duke hat and the other friend was laughing at her for knowing her shit. And I'm like, no, you have this backwards. Like the girl who knows her Villanova basketball shit is clearly the smart one of your group.
Carly, not only did Carly know her Villanova basketball, she also knew her Providence basketball. She knew some of the stats about Providence. She had absolutely done her research. So absolute hat tip to Carly and Kelly. I think were two of the highlights in my mind for sure. Like absolutely getting it done there. What is a couple of the others that didn't stand out or stood out for some of the wrong reasons? Actually, I'll start with one that was probably one of my favorites. Lily, towards the end of the carousel, just totally honest. Tess asked her, why are you into Villanova basketball? She said she was casually interested. She said, I like watching their butts. The guys look good in uniform. I mean, look, I can't disagree. Shaq Fit does work. It's called Shaq Fit because he gets them
for
fit
a reason.
And they look good.
I mean, the whole entire country was talking about Josh Hart's, double cake. So
Lily may have had the most accurate take of any of the interviews that happened.
That's a fair point, Rob. That's a fair point.
So Lily will probably not listen to this podcast, but she should.
Yes.
And I will tip my hat to her as well.
That. I got to talk about a problematic answer, potentially problematic answer.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
One guy goes, who are the, we asked who the names of the teams, who are the names of the players on the team?
Yeah.
The guy rips off Colin Gillespie first. Okay, that makes sense. Fine. Like Colin Gillespie is kind of the name of the team. And then he jumps to Chris Archidiakono. And I'm like, all white. I was very confused how you got from Colin Gillespie to Chris Archidiakono. I feel like you missed about 7 or 8 guys in between. Justin Moore, Eric Dixon, Jermaine Samuels has been on campus for like a million years. I don't know. Maybe one of those guys could come up in conversation beforehand. And I thought that was a little bit questionable. If I'm being honest.
That was really good. My other hot take. This is Tim. Shout outs to Tim. So I will say, Tim showed a lot of great insight, a lot of excitement about Villanova basketball. This one I think was just a little bit unfortunate in terms of the timing. Tessa asked him as one of his follow-ups, who's somebody who you're watching, maybe trending on the right side of things. He happened to pick Chris Arch, who followed up the interview with the questionable Georgetown performance. I'll just say that much. So that was maybe not a great pick on Tim's part. But hey, look, we've all had bad takes. I've certainly had my fair share of them. So that's just what happens. But all in all, I loved it. I loved the energy we got. Some of the folks really knew their stuff. Some of the folks not so much. But thank you to everybody who participated. Tessa will absolutely be back on campus. We love getting a vibe check, and it was really cool.
Tessa's sticking around. Sticking around.
If you want to be featured, just give us a shout. You know where to hit us up on the Twitter. on the IG, and coming at you very soon on the TikTok as well. Just kidding. We're not going on TikTok.
We could go on TikTok. I mean,
We
Rachel,
could, we
it's on
could.
Rachel. Rachel's just got to do it. If Rachel decides she wants to do TikTok, then we got TikTok, you know?
Nobody wants us on TikTok. The kids
No
don't want
pressure
us
though,
on
right,
TikTok.
guys?
The kids don't want us on TikTok.
That's right. No pressure, Rachel.
All
right. Bracket preview show. So thank you for everybody who joined our Twitter Spaces. Another well-attended Twitter Spaces there on a middle of the day, Saturday afternoon. So let's just run over it. And Rob, this is a little nostalgic for us. Our first episode ever was the bracket preview show back 4 years ago in
4 years ago.
Yep.
Absolutely wild.
And so what is the bracket preview show? The NCAA tournament committee, literally the committee that selects the field, shows you inside. They give you a little insight. They say right now, if the season were to end today, here are our top 16 teams and what region we'd slate them into. And also they give you the order of the teams. So you get the 1 seeds, you get 4 1 seeds, 4 2 seeds, 4 3 seeds, 4 4 seeds, but you also know 1 through 16 where they all rank.
Yeah.
Going into the bracket preview, we kind of assumed that Villanova would fall anywhere from 7th overall to about 10th overall. And where do we wind up? We wound up at 9th overall as the number 1 3 seed. So, I mean, we nailed it.
We nailed it.
We nailed it. That's step one. We did better than Joe Lenardi did. But neither here nor there. We also were very focused as to what region we got slated into. The committee did with Providence. We wanted to see what the committee did with Duke. And so there's a couple things to unpack about the bracket preview show that matter in the grand scheme of things here. So let's start with Duke, because the one team that I kind of disagree with us being behind is Duke. The other teams you could kind of point to and make sense of, like Purdue and Baylor, like we lost to Purdue.
Yeah.
We got fucking smoked by Baylor. And head-to-head doesn't necessarily matter, but those teams have also backed it up with wins throughout the season. So on top of those things, it makes sense that they'd be ahead. Duke, though, is the one team to talk about there because their resume is interesting. If you look at all the metrics, and when I say quality metrics, I mean like Ken Palm, Sagarin, BPI, etc. Villanova exceeds Duke in most of those metrics. And on top of that, on the resume metrics, also exceeds Duke. But what Duke has that Villanova does not have is Duke beat Gonzaga. And so that is the reasoning for putting Duke as the final 2 seed over Villanova. Now, in my view, it worked to our benefit.
Yeah.
The bracket preview, the committee showed us going into the Eastern region, which we've talked a lot about on this podcast. Can we somehow wind up on the Eastern region? Because East region is at Philadelphia at the Wells Fargo Center. That's a home game for us. We all know it. And the committee right now has us slated into the East region.
I mean, yeah, I'm down for it. My reaction from the preview was they give us Kansas, Kentucky, and Wisconsin in Philadelphia. Sign me up. I'm good. Let's go. I'll take the 3 seed. I don't need the 2. I'm happy. Let's rock and roll. We've got Bill Self's number. Kentucky, whatever. Jay Wright's a pretty good coach. We're in Philly. Wisconsin, I heard Wisconsin's going to be down an assistant coach as they recover from Juwan Howard's punch, which we referenced earlier today. So they may be not at their full faculties. It's unfortunate. But that was my big takeaway from this is I'm totally comfortable with that set of teams.
Yeah.
So let's go for the tournament.
Yeah.
Look,
I was pretty happy with it too. Kentucky, we don't match up that great with Kentucky. I mean, we got to be honest about that. But if we're in Philadelphia, I feel a lot better about matching up with Kentucky. Yeah. But then you also look at the other teams on the 2 line. Do I feel particularly great about matching up with Purdue again? No. Do I feel great about going against Baylor again? No.
Nose goes on that one.
I think we would beat Duke, but from the athletic standpoint, we don't match up well with them either. So, I mean, like, you're playing a team on the 2 line, the Sweet 16 as a 3 seed at Villanova, like, you're going to play a hard game. Like,
that's my thing too.
If we could be in the East region, then that's all that matters, right?
Yeah.
Like, then we're putting ourselves in the best position to get past that game. Ironically enough, the other side to your point, Kansas or Wisconsin in an Elite Eight game, yeah, oh yeah, sign me up. Oh
Yes.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, sign me up.
If
In Philadelphia, hell yeah. But just listen to that bracket, by the way. Like, oh my God, like the team, that's a success that is in that bracket, like all time. Kansas, Kentucky, Villanova, Wisconsin. Like, oh my God, just the media circus around the Wells Fargo Center would just be absolutely electric if those teams all wind up there and make it that far.
It would be pretty cool. I gotta say, if that's the way it shakes out, Bill Self is gonna be like, "You fucking kidding me?"
I guarantee
I gotta play Villanova in Philadelphia potentially. Like, come on.
I guarantee you, the first 2 calls that the tournament committee got were from John Calipari and Bill Self being like, "Fuck you if you think you're putting us with Jay Wright and the Villanova Wildcats in Philadelphia at their home arena." But
yeah, well
I don't care.
Now the tournament committee can be like, well, Jay has 2 national championships, Bill. You just have 1. Like, I'm sorry.
Same with John Calipari. It's true. It's true. It's true. These are things that are true statements.
Jay is 2-0 in national championship games.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry.
So quit your bitching.
Just win more. Just win more.
That's that. I mean, simple as that, right?
Yeah.
What else did we notice about the bracket show?
Providence.
Yeah, let's talk about Providence.
Yeah.
Providence got the 15th overall pick, the second to last 4 seed.
And again, this happened after they lost to us. So it's baked in the loss.
Yeah, they were baked in the loss. So they're in that top 4. That's awesome news. I feel better about us that there are 2 top 4 seeds coming out of the Big East as of right now. That could change.
Yeah.
I actually think it's possible that UConn goes on a tear and UConn winds up in the top 4 seed. They're slated as a 6 seed right now. It's not that far of a jump because the end of the 4 line and the beginning of the 6 line are very tightly packed.
Yeah.
And Providence falls out. But either way, you see the Big East coming in with 2 teams in the top 16. That's good news. That's good news for the conference. That means the conference has a good shot to get multiple teams into the second weekend. That is the name of the game. In my view, the name of the game for the conference this year is 3. We need 3 Sweet 16 teams.
Oof.
That validates the conference. That doesn't mean that the Big East is back, but like that validates the conference in the season that we've had. If we get 3 entrants into the Sweet 16, we're going to have 6 or 7 opportunities to get there, but that backs it up. Now, a couple other takeaways from this selection show. The fact that Duke did get that last 2 seed speaks to the fact that the committee is going to find a fucking way to get like 4 or 5 ACC teams in, even though that is an absolute poverty conference this year. That conference sucks. It is terrible, but they're going to find a way to work North Carolina into that first 4. I guarantee it. They're going to find a way to do it because, North Carolina in the first 4, that'll get a lot of eyeballs. And they're right. But they're going to find a way to manufacture it and get them into that slot. The other thing that you take away is that Wisconsin and Providence both had strong resumes, but did not have great quality metrics. And Houston had great quality metrics, but not a good resume. Wisconsin and Providence wound up in the top 16. Houston did not. So interesting to see how the committee did preference resume a little bit here over metrics, or you would have seen Houston jump in.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
All right. So It was a crazy week in college basketball, of course. A lot of people might be wondering, where's Villanova going to wind up? I'm listening to this podcast on Monday morning. Where should I expect Villanova to be at noon on Monday in the AP poll? Well, after beating Providence, Baylor lost, but I don't think we're going to jump Baylor given the head-to-head. I think we only climb 1 or 2 spots, 8 or 9. I think we'll jump Providence, of course, but I don't think we're going very far beyond that. Providence, I think, will fall back to about 11 or 12. UConn, though, has a good chance to jump way up because a lot of teams ahead of them. Michigan State lost twice. Texas lost. Wyoming lost. I think UConn has a chance to jump to like number 20. That's good. 3 teams in the top 20. I think top 20, 21. I think the Big East will have this year, this week. Okay.
Not bad.
So,
right.
Little Big East talk.
A little Big East talk. Can I throw one thing in there because I forgot to mention it? I hate doing this during podcasts. Like when we move past it and I missed an opportunity, I missed it. But it's too good. It's too good. And we have to shout out Colin's appearance on Barstool.
We fucked this up.
We really. I was going to mention this earlier and I totally forgot. But another little social media shout. Hat tip to Rachel for finding this. Colin was interviewed on Barstool and was asked basically like how he eats his steak or how he orders his steak. And normal answer, I'd say I expect medium, expect a medium rare, maybe it's just going all out, maybe a rare. Colin answers medium well. And when pushed on it, doubles down. And the guys are bantering. They're like, medium. Like they give him an out. They give him lots of outs. And he's like, no, I go medium well. This is terrible. Terrible judgment. It's offensive.
I have to laugh. I had to laugh because one of the guys goes like, "What are you, a health nut?" And he's like, "Yeah." It was such he deadpans the answer like. Yeah, I am.
Actually, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard of this guy called Shaq. But John Shackleton does not let me eat anything that adds any fat to my body. So therefore, I am not going to eat more than a medium well steak. Yeah. But this was a tough look. This was a tough.
I can't support it.
Look,
especially for an Outback Steakhouse sponsored athlete.
Yeah.
I don't know that Outback Steakhouse would recommend that for their patrons to order their steaks.
Yeah.
It could be a little bit of a clash. I don't know if there are NIL implications from this. It's putting a lot of things at risk.
Look, if he said during the season, if he elaborated more and said, during the season, because of, our health and safety stuff that we do on campus or whatever, I do medium well, even though it's not my favorite. And then I back it down to medium in the off season. I bet, okay. All right.
No.
But
stop.
Look, I'm trying to give the guy out. Okay.
There's no outs. There's no
he's
outs.
20, he's 22, 23. Give him, we cut him a little bit of slack. You know what
everybody makes bad decisions. Okay.
Yeah. And Colin did there.
Colin,
it almost convinced me to give him pass the fucking ball award of the week. I'll tell you that much.
It's true.
All right. Big East. We talked about where we think the Big East teams are going to wind up in the rankings. But we have to talk a little bit about this conference that is coming down to an absolute cluster at the end of the season. It is wild in the Big East. So we mentioned Providence. We beat them. So now we're in the control the destiny role here. If we win out, we win the Big East title. But Providence escaped at Hinkle today, 1-point overtime win over Butler to stay in first place in the conference. They lose that game, they drop to second place. And then we're having a conversation where we can lose to UConn and then beat Providence and beat Butler and win the conference. They did not do that. They held it together. They found a way to get it done. They were down big early in the game and they came all the way back, rip roaring all the way back and won that game. Kudos to them. They find ways to win those games, man. It's crazy. Yeah. UConn and Creighton, of all teams, are tied at third. That being said, UConn has a little bit of a more manageable finish. They play us, yes, but they play. I think they have DePaul and Georgetown left on their schedule. And they do also go on the road to play Creighton, which is a revenge game for UConn. So that UConn Creighton game could be a decisive game in terms of getting that third place finish. Creighton, on the other hand, has a gauntlet to finish. They visit all of a sudden red hot St. John's, like scorching red hot, blowing people out St. John's.
Very athletic.
Yeah, very athletic. Then they play at Providence, and then they play home versus UConn and Seton Hall. That's a tough finish for Creighton. So that third place might not last very long.
Yeah.
Marquette is a clear fifth. They lost today to Creighton, but they're like pretty clear of the sixth place teams, which is a cluster. Hall, Xavier, Seton Hall, Xavier, and St. John's are all like star-crossed right now, and they're trending wildly different directions. St. John's, as I mentioned, is trending way up. Seton Hall is was coming out of their January swoon, but they did just drop 2 to us and UConn, which you can kind of forgive because it was at those places. But Seton Hall has to find a way to get right. They beat DePaul last night, but it took everything they had to get that W over DePaul at home. And then Xavier has been, falling off the wagon, and Xavier fans are pissed. Xavier fans are absolutely pissed. This is like the third year in a row under Travis Steele where they've fallen off the wagon in February, and the X fans are getting impatient, to say the least. But they're all tied for 6 at 7 and 8 in the conference. And then we have Butler and DePaul kind of bringing up somewhat of the rear. They're not easy outs, but they're clearly 9th and 10th. And then Georgetown is still an offer. But this matters a little bit. The top 5 get the bye in the Big East tournament, right? And then 6 through 11, like 6 plays 11, 7 plays 10, 8 plays 9. So all those teams play Wednesday. And so you're looking at a Wednesday that could actually be kind of interesting. Usually Wednesday are just like, oh, fuck that. I don't give a shit about Wednesday games. That's like the DePaul, that's like DePaul day. But now it's all of a sudden like you're going to have Xavier in there. You're going to have Seton Hall in there. You're going to have St. John's.
Well, and also because it's 3 games this year on Wednesday instead of it has been 2. But since we've added UConn, it changed how we do it in terms of who gets that bye and what the bracket looks like going forward. So yeah, it definitely adds some more intrigue to Wednesday.
Yeah, there's definitely some intrigue on that Wednesday. And then everyone's jockeying to figure out where they want to even wind up. I mean, you and I have talked about this, right? Like there's a competitive thing, like as a fan, like we want to, stake our claim and win the Big East regular season. But there's also from a pragmatic standpoint, finishing second in the Big East and getting that 7 p.m. time, tip time on Thursday is pretty nice.
Yeah.
So if we end up losing the conference by, whatever winning percentage margin to Providence, am I going to be distraught about it? Absolutely not.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
Not at all.
All right. That kind of lays out everything we needed to lay out pre our conversation with Rob Dauster. So we are going to take a small 30-second break, 20-second break, whatever Brian decides is the break. And then at the other side of the break, we will be back with a conversation with Rob Dauster previewing the UConn game, the big time UConn game coming up this Tuesday. So stay tuned. We'll be back in just a second. All right, everybody, welcome back. It's the Full 40 with Chris and Rob. We are here with Rob Dauster from the Field of 68. Rob, I know you do a ton of stuff there, but I feel like every time I log on Twitter, which is like most of the day, there's a video of you and like John Fanta playing live on my feed. So I won't do your credentials justice. I know you played college hoop at basketball, at Vassar years ago, 15 years ago, but I can't do justice to your resume. So can you give us a little bit of background?
Well, first and foremost, thanks for dating me on that, making me seem old.
Oh, we're the same age. We graduated 2009. So we're the same age.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I was a reporter for NBC for 12 years. I was part of their COVID cutbacks in August of 2020. Jeff Goodman and I decided that we wanted to try to put together something of our own, and it ended up being the Field of 68. And what it's kind of turned into this year is, in addition to all of these team specific podcasts that we have, every night at 11 we do the Field of 68 After Dark, which we're actually recording in about 90 minutes here. And it's turned into something where I wanted to try to replicate what Baseball Tonight was when I was growing up. I just remember like during the summer, right?
Totally.
I would come home and all I would do is like get home when I was like 13, 14 years old and throw on Baseball Tonight and just watch that every night at 11. And that just didn't exist in the college basketball space. And it was something that we wanted to try to create. We found last year that Jeff and I did everything like every morning at 9 a.m. We were doing this like best bets, kind of half best bets, half recap show every morning. And we found that we got so much more interaction when we do all of that the night before. So we just figured, hey, this is the time to try to put something together and see what works. And that's kind of what we've been doing with the Field of 68 and the Field of 68 After Dark. And, now it's simulcast on Sirius XM. So it's taken off a little bit, and it's been fun to watch this thing grow.
It's been awesome. It's been awesome.
But fun.
It's been awesome to watch. I'm on it every night. I typically pick it up through Twitter, but I watch it almost every time that you guys are on, because it's always fun. There's always a mix of different people who are on, whether it's you, whether it's Fanta, whether it's TO. It doesn't. I love the podcast that you guys do, the Dauster, TO, and Fanta podcast. I love that. The content's great, and I think you guys bring like a ton of value in terms of just like being able to like, hey, I just watched a bunch of games. This was awesome, and now I want to hear people talk about it. And so, I mean, that's why we started our podcast for Villanova. But the fact that you guys are doing that is terrific, and I'm glad to see you guys are doing well with
I mean, that's kind of what people want, right? Like there's teams that I'm fans of, that I'm a fan of, right? And after the games are over, especially if it's like a huge win, all I want to do is listen to other people that are either cover the team, really know the team, or are fans of the team talk about it.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's not like my favorite. I don't know if you could see it over here, but I got my Tottenham Hotspur scarf over here. Right. I'm a Spurs supporter. Cool. And
that's a tough life, Rob.
It is, but they beat City on Saturday, right?
Amazing.
And it was like one of the most ridiculous endings that you'll ever see. And there's one like Spurs podcast that I listened to, and they went live like immediately afterwards. They were just like, yeah, we're not gonna wait, we're just gonna go right now, because they knew that's all anybody wanted to listen to. Like, people want that immediate reaction. And it's been fun to see. We've gotten to the point where when you set up like the YouTube stream, you can see people kind of queuing up and waiting to get in. And like, we'll have 100 people waiting at the start of the show. And it's just kind of like, okay, people are starting to, they're coming back. This isn't just something where you're getting lucky with Google searches or the YouTube algorithms. Where there are people that are actively searching this out and coming back. And it's been fun to watch it grow like that.
Yeah, it's terrific, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, the other night we hosted a Twitter Spaces like after the Providence Nova game, and there was like 300 people on there from like all different fan bases, because they were like jacked up after watching the game. Then after we sign off, I'm like ready to go to bed, and Fanta sends his link out. He hosts another Spaces for another couple hours. I was up till like 2:30 in the morning just talking college hoops.
Yeah, I mean that's what's great about it, is because you can't. College basketball is always going to be a little bit of a niche sport, right? Because it's never going to be as big as the NBA, because it's not a professional, it's not pro team. So the quality of basketball is never going to be as good. You don't have the same kind of star power. Like, people are going to tune in to watch LeBron or watch Steph or watch Ja Morant or watch LaMelo, like whoever it is, they're turning in to watch those stars. And you're not going to get that at the college level. It's never going to be better than football, or bigger than football, because that's the sport in America. So when you have all of these national shows that need to cover sports and need to get as many eyeballs as possible, you're always going to have them going back to what gets them the most interaction and the most eyeballs and the most people paying attention. And that's always going to end up being something NFL, something college football, something NBA. It's difficult to find good quality national coverage for college hoops, which is why like stuff like this pops up. And it's also just so much more spread out, right? In the NBA, you have 32 teams and you probably have 10 that actually matter, right? In college basketball, there are like 100 teams that actually quote unquote matter, right? There's probably 40 to 50 that have fan bases that are diehard and going to watch, are going to pay attention to every single game. It's just when you get it that spread out and that kind of, I think diluted is probably the best word, you're never going to have massive numbers for each of these specific teams. But it doesn't mean that there's not this entire population of people that love college basketball. So that was our vision. It's just trying to tap into all of these little kind of pockets where college basketball matters more than anything else on the planet. And I don't know if we've fully done that, but it's been fun to be able to watch. Like, we have Texas Tech fans that completely flood our chat on YouTube at this point. We have Auburn fans that anytime we do anything Auburn, they're just going nuts for it on Twitter. It's been enjoyable to see, like, it's exactly what we're looking for. These little pockets of fans that don't get enough of the coverage that they want have just been flocking to us because they need it. They want it. And so hopefully we're giving them something that they want.
That's terrific. That's terrific. I love it. Well, you also host the Top Dogs podcast.
That's probably why I'm here, right?
Yeah, that's why you're here. About UConn. And that's what we're here to talk about. Villanova and UConn have an enormous matchup. I mean, last week's podcast, we were talking about Villanova Providence as the game of the year in the conference. I think you could argue that this is the game of the year of the conference now that one's behind us. Tuesday night, Excel Center in Hartford at 8 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. So on the bigger channel from a Big East standpoint. Nova's looking like they're probably going to be ranked in the AP poll, like about 8 or 9 tomorrow. UConn might get up to 20, 21, 20. Because UConn's been on a little bit of a roll of late. So, this is a huge game with massive implications, both in terms of Big East tournament seeding. I think UConn has a chance if they win here and get a couple of W's down the stretch, which is somewhat of a manageable schedule. I think UConn has a chance to somehow crack into that top 4 seed line somehow, although being a 6, which is where most of the bracketologists have it now, is kind of a dangerous spot to be in. I kind of like that spot as a 6 seed. So there's a lot on the line in terms of what's going on with Villanova and UConn on Tuesday night.
It's going to be it's a big game. I think it's bigger for Villanova in the sense that this is kind of like that last hurdle they have to get through to set themselves up for a game for the title, basically against Providence, right? On what would that would end up being like a week, right?
That's the following Tuesday at the Finneran Pavilion. Yeah. This
is the game that sets them up to be able to more or less win the league by beating Providence at home. So there's a lot on the line for Villanova. It's legitimately the Big East title is going to be on the line for Villanova in this game. It matters for UConn. I do kind of feel like at this point it's a little bit like UConn is playing with house money, right? Like you want to get right, you want to start playing well heading into the tournament. You never want to lose a home game. It's Villanova. You always want to be able to take your shots against Villanova when you can. And it would certainly help them with seeding because Villanova's like what, 8th in the net or something like that, top 10.
Right now they're 7th in the net as of this morning.
Yeah, so they're up there. So obviously this would be a great win for your resume, and it might even be enough to get you from that kind of like 5-6 range to maybe more of like the 4-5 range, like you mentioned. But it's not. At the end of the day, I think it's basically going to be like you're playing for the 3 or the 4 seed in the Big East tournament. And frankly, I think if we're going to assume that Providence has the number 1 overall seed in the Big East tournament, you might want that 4 seed over getting the 3 seed or the 2 seed. If you can avoid Villanova in the semifinals of the Big East tournament, that's probably what you want to do. So there's a little bit of a catch-22 here. It's also it's kind of weird to know that Providence fans are going to be rooting for UConn here. Like I don't know how much you guys are aware of. Like,
no, we're all in it.
Wait. So actually, I want to clarify. So I feel like Chris is more aware of this rivalry and this tension. I feel like your average Villanova fan is not as in tune to whatever tension is happening here.
Yeah.
So definitely fill us in a little bit.
There's always been a little bit of a bitterness there, right? Because they are the two schools in the two smallest states. They are the two programs that were always kind of overlooked together before UConn took off and won their 4 titles in 15 years. There's always been kind of a big brother, little brother sentiment involved there, if that makes sense.
Yep.
You know, that it would always, it's a kind of rivalry where Providence, UConn fans always knock Providence for viewing this as their biggest game of the season and their biggest rivalry, or UConn fans are like, yeah, our biggest rival is Syracuse, or it's Duke because we play them in the Final Four, like whatever it is. There was always that kind of vibe to it. And now that Providence has like a definitively better team than UConn does, I think it's something where you've seen it ratcheted up, because now Providence is the big dog. Now Providence is the team that has a very real chance to win the Big East regular season title for the first time ever, mind you. They've been in the Big East for, 40 something years. Yeah. This will be their first ever Big East regular season title. So I don't know if you can really call yourself a Big East program if you never actually won the Big East regular season.
Wow.
Can you?
Wow.
Can you? Are you allowed to do that?
Man.
I'm just trolling. I'm just coming at the Providence, man. They are so much fun to rile up, man.
Oh my God, they're the best. They're the best to rile up. They are so funny. Yeah. There's some that are just like that are, I've had to mute probably like 15 of them because it's just like the same relentless nonsense. Like, oh, you call us, blah, 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 whatever. There's one guy, I can't remember his name, but he's now goes through every single like starting lineup for teams that UConn plays. And he tweets at me before every single game. Hey, UConn, Xavier didn't have Nate Johnson. Looks like UConn's the luckiest team in college basketball. Oh my God.
Every single game.
They're so mad. They're so mad.
Well, I told him the other day, like, look, troll to troll, I respect the hustle. Like it takes some effort for you to do this every single game. I was like, I respect it. I tip my cap to you, man. It takes effort.
What's so funny, dude, is going through your mentions, because you
never want to do that.
You've tweeted a couple of times like, oh, Providence and their luck box season and stuff like that. And like, candidly though, I've listened to you a lot. You compliment the hell out of Providence on everything that you've been on, and yet those handful of times that you've faded them a couple of times, and they're in your mentions so much. It's crazy.
It's the funniest part is like there's just everything is like it'll be let me think, like Seattle Friar or Charlottesville Friar. Like it's just the name of the town that they live in with Friar at the end of it. And there's like 500 of these guys. Like the Friar fan or the Friar, like there's just 500 of these accounts that just exist. Yeah. All of them with like the same 60 followers, and it's just they're relentlessly just hitting you over and over again, and they don't understand that when I say something like when I go on there and I say like, oh, Providence, they needed Jared Bynum to hit 7 threes and he shot 14% last season. It's more proof that they're the luckiest team in college, but they don't understand it like that. I'm just saying that to rile them up. So
it's terrific. It's terrific.
So
my God. When we did the spaces after the game, a bunch of UConn and Providence fans jumped on our spaces. The UConn fans, by and large, kind of just like stayed back and listened. But the Providence fans like raised their hand to talk, and I brought them on, and they were like, "Yo, kudos to Nova. They were good. Colin Gillespie's legit. I can't hate on that. Like whatever. But I just gotta say, fuck UConn and fuck Dan Hurley, and like, they just were so mad.
Yeah, they don't like UConn, man. They really do not like UConn, and it's probably because UConn fans they can be a little unpleasant.
Well, we'll get into that. We'll get into that a little bit. So let's talk about the game. So a few weeks ago, Nova, without Justin Moore, was able to get Adama Sanogo in foul trouble and then really take control of that game from about halfway through the first half on. Gillespie got hurt with about 10 minutes left to go, but by that point, the game was already kind of in hand. What's going to be different about this game this time out?
Hopefully Adama doesn't get 2 fouls in the first half.
Yeah.
And if he does, hopefully Dan Hurley doesn't sit him again. Like that's that's my biggest pet peeve with this coaching staff is that they always foul out their guys in the first half as soon as they get two. I hate that. I think it's not just him. It's not just Dan that does it. There's a lot of coaches that do it, and I think
Totally.
it's the worst thing for coaches to do. I think you got to be able to trust your guys, especially like I can understand Adama to a point because he's not. I mean, he's only been playing basketball for 5 years, right? Like he's still very young in terms of his development and learning the game. A lot of it is very new to him. He doesn't have a great feel because he was a soccer player. He was a goalie until he was like 15. But like RJ Cole, you're 20. RJ Cole's like 28 years old, right? He's got the beard of a 40-year-old man, and you're going to sit him when he gets 2,000 in the first half. Like you got to
Right.
trust your guys at some point,
Yeah.
especially because like those two are so important to what they do. You know, if it's Tyrese Martin that's out, there's other pieces that you can kind of fit in to make it work, right? There is no other replacement for Adama Sanogo. There is no other replacement. There's definitely no other replacement for RJ Cole. So to me, that's the thing that kind of gets me is fouling your guys out when they get two in the first half. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But the biggest thing, and I've said this over and over again, the key to UConn, like when they are at their best, is when they have to be the team that plays the hardest. They have to be the toughest team. They have to be the more physical team. They have to be all of those like different cliches and adjectives that you can use to explain a team that is basically playing their balls off the whole time.
Right.
That's what they need to be, because they're not going to beat you with skill. They're not going to be the team that runs pick and rolls to death. They're like the opposite of what Villanova is. They have all these great athletes. They're going to beat you up on the glass. They need to be able to get out in transition and take advantage of the turnovers that they force. They need to take advantage of the easy baskets that they create from using their physical tools and all that. And when they're not playing that way, which kind of like their motor can kind of go hot and cold. When they're not playing that way, they're not very good. Because like if you're part of the reason they run, if you watch them, everything they do offensively is scripted. Everything they do is a set. Everything they do is something that is kind of called from by Dan Hurley and by the coaching staff. And part of the reason why is that they don't have guys that are necessarily intuitive basketball players. I think is the best way to phrase it. Like Villanova, I think they probably have like 3 sets that they run, and that's it.
Yeah.
Everything that they do is built around the idea of beating your first defender, getting to the paint, drawing help, and finding the guy that is left open, creating closeouts, and like recycle and repeat. That's the
Up
entire
fake,
offense
then
is that.
yeah, just do that. Yeah.
Get a paint touch, kick it out, attack a closeout, get a paint touch, kick it out, attack a closeout until you get a layup or a 3 or a pull-up jumper or whatever it is. Right? That is their offense.
Mhm.
And UConn is like, we're going to run this double screen and then we're going to have to set it up and run this counter because we've run this 3 times and they know what's coming here. And we're going to have this counter to this, to this, to this. So they have counters to counters to counters, but it's just everything is scripted because they're not as intuitive when it comes to just being a basketball player that Villanova is. So they're very much a contrast in how teams are built. But if UConn shows up and plays as the tougher, more aggressive, more physical team, then I think they have a very real chance to win because they're going to have the size advantage.
I think sorry, go ahead.
All I was going to say, the problem is like Villanova might be the most mentally tough team in college basketball. And if you look at those dudes, every single one of those dudes looks like they're built like a weightlifter. Like whoever is their strength and conditioning coach, like good for that guy. Like he earned his paycheck.
We've had him on several times. His name is John Shackleton. He is world class. He is incredible. And Jay listens to him, by the way. Just a little insight into the program. Like it feels like he does a whole weight and conditioning, strength and conditioning segment prior to the season. And then Jay basically picks his mind and goes, how'd these guys do? And if he gets like the down vote, then these guys just ride the pine over. Like they don't get past, if they don't get past the Shaq Fit lab, they call it, then basically they don't see the floor. And so it's all about buying into the program, and that's all part of it. And that's what Villanova does. But look, I hear your point. I get it. Ken Pom actually has this, I think, as recently as last night. Ken Pom has this as UConn favored by 1. I feel like this game, even like I hear the Adama Sanogo point. One thing I've always feel like is that anytime there's especially in conference, there's a conference big. I feel like Villanova always punches above its weight class because Villanova always been undersized under Jay Wright, except for like a couple of years, but always been undersized under Jay Wright. And they always punch above their weight class down low. I feel like this game is going to be decided on the wings because RJ Cole is absolutely like awesome. Obviously, Moore and Gillespie are great. And then you got Dixon and Sanogo down low. Obviously, Sanogo's like physically looks like he should dominate Dixon. But I feel like on the wings is where this game is decided because like that's where UConn, I always feel like is like you mentioned Tyrese Martin, but I feel like they're like all every single one of them is an X factor. The team goes how they go. Is that right?
Yeah, to me, I think Jordan Hawkins is the guy off the
Right.
bench that determines if you want to go like a pure X factor, it's Jordan Hawkins. Like when him and Tyler Polley are making shots, it just opens so much stuff up offensively, and it's like the microwave score coming off the bench.
Right.
I don't think Akok Cook is going to be playing, and that's a big blow because he can create a different, like that's when all of the space gets created on the floor when you put him at the 5 and you can let him go out there and knock down shots because he's shooting like 40-something% from 3. I think Adama is their best player and RJ's the most indispensable. Like you don't have another point guard option. Jalen Gaffney has the confidence of a sixth grader right now. Like he just, I don't know what happened to him this offseason, but like he has not been playing well this year. RJ Cole, like they need him on the floor because he's the only guy that can initiate. And then Adama's their best player. They run everything around him, and the fact that you can get him for kind of seals and ducats. But Tyrese Martin, to your point, is the most important player on that team because he is the guy that brings that energy that I mentioned. He is the guy that is beating on his chest and doing the celebrations to the crowd and things like this. And when he's playing like that, when he's in that mood, it lifts everyone on that team. It lifts the emotions, it lifts the effort, it lifts the energy. Like he is the guy that brings that. And the crowd feeds off him too. So when he decides that he wants to show up and play like that, it completely changes what this UConn team is because they play like the team that they need to be. Right. When he's not playing like that, then you're kind of relying on, okay, we're going to need Tyler to hit some shots. We're going to need Jordan to hit some shots. And we're going to have to hope that RJ can play a little bit of hero ball and that Adama is going to be able to get the seals that he needs to be able to be effective. That doesn't always work. And that's a tough way to make a living when you take a lot of tough twos. And that's what they end up doing when Tyrese isn't playing at his best.
Yeah. It does feel like on the offensive end that UConn is thinking through their offense too much. It's like that old adage, if you're thinking too much about it, that you're not, like, it's like when you're playing golf, like, I don't know, you're thinking about every mechanic piece in your swing, like you're guaranteed to hit a slice. Like it's one of those things that when I watch UConn, I feel like sometimes when their offense is bad, they're thinking. When their offense is good, they're going.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, they got to be able to be effective. It's like I said, in transition and in second chance points where you can get kind of easy layups off of effort and athleticism and just playing harder than the other team. But they don't really have guys I think that's probably a pretty good point because they don't really have guys, like I said, that are going to be the intuitive players. Like they run sets over and over and over again because that's what they need to do to be able to create offense. They don't really have anyone that can go get a shot on their own. You know, look at their roster right now. If you're going to isolate somebody, right, to go get a bucket, it's the end of a clock, you need to run a 1-4 low, whatever it is. Who can you trust to go get a good shot if you isolate them? Can't trust Adama because you doubled him, he's going to turn the ball over. He's had like 3 or 4 times this season where he's just backed people down until the shot clock went off. Tyrese, maybe, but he's, again, like you kind of know what he's doing. He's going to square you up. He's going to jab right. He's going to go left, and he's going to try to finish with that little like awkward kind of sliding floater, whatever you call it. Andre Jackson is not someone that you can isolate at this point. Isaiah Whaley is not an offensive threat beyond like knocking down an open jumper at this point. Jalen Gaffney, you can't really trust. Tyler Polley's a catch and shoot guy. Jordan Hawkins is he needs to get in Coach Shackelford's weight and conditioning program. Let's put it like that. And RJ Cole's the guy. It basically comes down to, like, if you can't get something out of all of these sets and these schemes and the stuff that they run, then you need to rely on RJ Cole being a god. And RJ Cole, he's been fantastic this year. He's also a 5'11" MEAC transfer, right? Yeah. Like he kind of is what he is. So that's why, I agree with your point. It's just, it's kind of it's frustrating to watch at times when they are not playing with the effort that they need, because then it just becomes so glaringly obvious that this team has some very real issues offensively.
I hear
So
you.
Rob, I gotta ask, who wins?
I mean, how can you ever pick against Villanova? Like, I don't think I'll ever pick against Villanova in a big spot in a big game. We saw it in the second half of Providence, right? Like that, walking into that gym in that moment, in that environment, with that fan base and that crowd, like they were over capacity there. Like they were just letting a whole bunch of fans just kind of snuck in, and they just let them stay in, right?
It's
And
awesome.
they're loud, and I don't know how many people you know from Providence, but they are they enjoy their cold beverages, and when they get some cold beverages in them, they are feisty.
Yeah.
And it did not rattle them. Like Villanova, those dudes are robots, and I mean that as a compliment. Like Colin Gillespie, like if you watch him, he had the same facial expression after like scoring 33 points and hitting a couple of huge threes down the stretch as he did probably when, like, I don't know, like a girl broke up with him or something like that, right? Like he's never, his facial expressions never change. And everybody on that roster, their facial expressions never change. They don't get rattled. Now, there's going to be times where they get their asses kicked. Like we saw it with Baylor, right?
Yeah.
But they're never going to be, the moment's never going to be too big for them. They're just so calm, cool, and collected. And I expect it at this point. Like it's Villanova, man. Like they're just going to go out there and they do what they do. Now, how does UConn win? I think they need to get 15 to 18 offensive rebounds. I think they need to get a combined 30 to 35 points in transition or on the offensive glass. And they need Tyler Polley and Jordan Hawkins to come in and make some shots off the bench. And if all of that happens, then I think we're going to be in a situation where you're in a tight game down the stretch. And if it's in a tight game down the stretch, like you're going to pick Villanova, or you're going to pick UConn, who's 1-8 in one possession games under Dan Hurley, over Villanova and Jay Wright. Like, I don't have a great feeling, if you guys can tell.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'm a little bit more pessimistic on the Villanova side, but not necessarily because I don't disagree with anything that you said necessarily, but no, Providence. I mean, UConn can be very physical, etc. I think this is going to be a rock fight. The first game was high scoring. I think this game is going to be more of a rock fight.
If it's a rock fight, then I think UConn has a real chance. If it's something where UConn's got to score 85 or 90 points to win, like they're not, that's not happening.
The thing is that I'm surprised the first game wasn't a rock fight, because candidly, Jay Wright like loves rock fights. Like he'll just throw the rock fight out like every so often. I feel like
I don't think people realize that they play at one of the slowest paces in all of college basketball. And they have forever under Jay. Like they walk the ball up. I think it kind of got overlooked because they were just so ruthlessly efficient. Like the 2018 team was a little bit. Yeah, that was also a little bit of an outlier in terms of how fast they played.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else has been, he's always in like the 340s or 350s in terms of tempo on KenPom. And I think it's by design, because he knows that, you get them in a half court, and he's got all of these guys that know how to run ball screens and people that you can't guard. Yeah. Smart.
No, and so that's why I feel like, oh man, this could wind up as a rock fight, and then you're coming down to a couple possession game down the stretch. But with that said, I just want to take the temperature a little bit on the program, on UConn as a program, as a whole, kind of, because I've listened to some of the Top Dogs podcasts that you've had. I've read some of the tweets from UConn Twitter, which UConn Twitter is terrific. But I've read some of the tweets, and it feels like there's like this group of fans who I haven't been able to pin down necessarily, who are starting to get a little bit impatient, starting to get a little bit negative with Hurley and kind of the program. And when I listen to you, I feel like, man, you guys got to calm down, etc. I listen to Top Dogs, and you guys, you are kind of in this zone of like, guys, like we're on the right track here. By the way, I happen to agree. I think UConn is like set up very well. I've seen some of the recruits that they're getting, and some of the direction of the program, the culture that they're building there. In my mind, this is like all heading the right direction. But what is going on in the UConn fan base that there's some people out there who are a little bit more negative?
They want it to be what it was in 2009, right? They wanted to be what it was when Jim Calhoun was running this thing, and they were getting any player that they wanted. And they were top 5 every year because everybody knew you go to UConn, you play 2-3 years, and then you're going to end up being a top 5 to 10 pick if you're good enough, right? And it's not that right now. Fans forget that 4 years ago when Danny Hurley took over the program, they were under 500 and they were playing in the AAC, right? In 2018, I'm going to bring it up right now. In 2018, in his first year with the program, 2018-19, they went 16-17. They were 6-12 in the American, right? In the American, they were one of the worst teams in the American. It was like them and East Carolina and Tulsa. Like, that's what this program was when Danny Hurley got it. And he could have, I'm sure, could have gone out and gotten some more of these like 5-star guys that would have tried to change what it is immediately. And that's not what he's done. He's gone out and gotten players that are a little bit more of projects. Guys like James Bouknight, who have a high upside that need development. Guys like Adama Sanogo, who have a high upside but need development. Guys like the commit they got from Georgia, Stephen Castle, who has a high upside but is going to need some development. Like, it takes time to get this where it needs to be. And the other part of it is like, there's frustration on losing the close games. There have been a lot of close games, or there have been a lot of bad possessions late in games that have cost UConn wins. And that's kind of what UConn is at this point, because they are a team, like I said, that basically has one guy that can create a shot for himself. And when you get to an end of game scenario and teams kind of know what's coming, it's very difficult sometimes to get that shot when you're kind of in that moment. I don't know if you guys watched the Seton Hall UConn game, but the one that always sticks out to me is they're down by 1 at the end of overtime on the road at Seton Hall, and they run a play where they're supposed to get a steal for Adama Sanogo, and Tyrese Martin gets the ball in the wing, and the steal's not there, and the pass is in there to Adama in the post, and Tyrese kind of like he freezes and he doesn't really know what to do when, you know, you're Tyrese Martin. Put the ball on the floor and go to the rim and go get fouled, go make a play. Right? That's kind of, I understand why fans are frustrated about that. And, you know, it's frustrating to me too. And I'm sure it's frustrating to that coaching staff. But I always try to tell people this, like, they are top 20 or top 25 in every single metric that matters, right? We're sitting here right now and UConn is 19-7 overall. They are 10-5 in the Big East, and they're coming off of wins over Xavier and Seton Hall at home that were relatively stress-free wins. Like, Xavier got a little bit close in the second half.
I never doubted that you guys were going to win those games.
Yeah.
Based on watching them. Yeah.
The first half wasn't great against Seton Hall. So yeah, like I get it. Okay. But if I was going to tell you that at the start of the season, UConn would be 19-7 heading into a home game with Villanova, where they had just won 3 in a row and 4 of their last 5, right? They're 3rd in the Big East, and they have a chance to climb their way to a top 3 or 4 seed if they win out, right? And if they make a run of the Big East tournament, you would have told me that was that you wouldn't be thrilled with that season. Like, right. It's the fact that they had the win over Auburn and the close losses that has raised the level of expectation for what this program should be, instead of saying, you know what, like, we're pretty damn good for a team that 4 years ago was basically East Carolina.
Yeah.
So
right.
That's where the angst comes from.
I think another part of that is that I think a lot of people discount the double round robin of the Big East.
Yeah, that's tough.
Like A, this league is good this year in general. But B, you have to play teams twice and they know you. And to the point, on UConn 4 championships in 15 years. Like, the kids playing still have especially the 11 and 14 titles fresh on their mind. They watched those championships as kids growing up. Like, the UConn is still UConn on the front of the jersey, even if the program is kind of, they're beyond the rebuild phase, but, like, you know, kind of trying to climb that final ladder, the final couple rungs in the ladder to go from, like, okay, good, solid top 25 program to elite. Like, it's a grind. And in the Big East Conference, when you have to play every team twice, it is not easy. And I feel like there's, like, almost like a discounting. Well, this Big East is not the old Big East, but, like, people forget Big East had USF, DePaul, And a bunch of teams, St. John's and Seton Hall weren't good. Providence wasn't particularly good at that time. Like the old Big East had a lot of dregs, and it was an unbalanced schedule. UConn typically did play a tougher one because, money, and ratings. But like there was a lot of easy wins in that league, where this league has, other than Georgetown, doesn't have an easy win this year.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. And to your point, like when you're building a program, it's relatively easy to get yourself to be good, right? To be in the mix, to be in the tournament. Like that's something that a lot of coaches can do. It's not easy to go take that next step to where you are the cream of the crop, to where you are a top 10 team nationally, to where you are competing for Final Fours and national titles. Like it doesn't happen immediately. And the fact of the matter is, like, what Jim Calhoun did at UConn in Storrs, Connecticut, is right there with Scott Drew winning a title at Baylor as the best building job in the history of college basketball. Like, not a rebuilding job, a building job. The fact that this is a nationally relevant basketball program is something of a miracle. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Storrs, Connecticut, but there's not a lot there other than like cows. That's what they got. They got cows and corn, right? That there's no reason that there should be a basketball powerhouse in Storrs, Connecticut. So you got to give it time to get back to what it is and just enjoy the fact that you care. Like, this is what I tell fans all the time. Enjoy the fact that you care again. Enjoy the fact that like these losses are crushing, right?
Yeah.
Because you didn't feel like that 3-4 years ago.
Right. Yeah, we were indifferent a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather have my weekend ruined by a bad loss than forget that the team is actually playing.
Yeah. All right, Rob, I wanted to talk so much about the Hurley and the program and the fans kind of embracing this heel mentality, kind of like, coming in as the bad boys of the conference. But I do want to be respectful of your time.
I will say this, his personality really fits with what the UConn fan base is, right? Yeah. The state of Connecticut, most of the people that live on the 95 and the 91 corridors, very much are similar to the people that would be living in Jersey City in terms of kind of that New York mentality, right? It's similar to what it's like living in Providence. So the fact that you have this brash guy coming in that's willing to be this nuts and be this intense and care this much and wear it on his sleeve and be this passionate about it and not be afraid for people to think that he's a weirdo for all of these like kind of insane habits that he has. The Connecticut fan base has really embraced that. Right now, it can be a little bit grating, and I'm sure it's not the easiest thing in the world to play for him, but Jim Calhoun was an asshole. Like, it was not easy to play for him too. If you win, your players will show up, even if you're, not the nicest human being in the world. So yeah, he very much fits what this fan base is looking for out of a coach and kind of the personality of the people that are going to be supporting that program.
I love it. And by the way, I love having a heel. I think we need that in the league. But like Villanova is like, as much as Villanova fans love to be like, tough and whatever, like, well, we've won so much or whatever.
They're too bland to hate. Like,
it's too hard to hate. We're not hateable. We're not hateable. Like, if anything, you hate us because we're not like aggressive enough. You know what I mean? Like, it's because we're bland as a fan base.
Yeah. I mean, that's really what it is. It's like you got a bunch of these nerds that live on the main line. It's like,
I love it.
Yeah, so you're not wrong.
No, you're not wrong. A, you're not wrong, and B, I love the fact that like we got UConn people back in the conference, and like the conference needs a little bit of that angst.
I'll tell you what, man, it's good. It's good to be back in the conference where you hate the other teams, right?
Yeah.
Like, where it's just like you care about it. You're invested. Like,
right.
it's nice to be invested again.
Big East tournament's going to be fun.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, it is.
It's going to be wild.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah.
All righty, Rob. Hey, thanks so much for joining us, and this was a real treat for our listeners, and we really appreciate you jumping on with us.
Always a pleasure, guys. Hope we get that win on Tuesday night.
I hope we get our win, but nevertheless, thanks again to Rob Dauster for joining us here on the Full 40. That wraps up this week's episode. So thank you everybody for listening. And as always, let's go Nova.